Hello, dear friends. My name is Karim, and this is our first podcast. We are very excited to present it to you finally after a long time of consideration. Many people asked us to start sharing our knowledge, anything that we know about health and answer questions. And we've decided to do it finally. So there we go. Please don't be too harsh to judge us. Um,
Anyway, please submit your
but
questions.
and give us your suggestion of what you think goes good or where we need to work on. So we'd really appreciate that. Thank you. So let's begin.
Okay, we have already some pre-submitted questions. So let's start with tackling them. The first question is, should I go gluten-free?
Um, Gluten.
A very broad question.
It's a good question. It's the question that's on the rise now, and many people are switching to gluten-free nutrition. We need to understand what it is in. Would you like to attend to it? Sorry about it. See, one thing we were not ready for. But okay, so continuing talk about gluten. Many people been considering go gluten-free and understanding what gluten does and how it causes the reaction. And we know that the ultimate reaction to gluten is celiac disease. This is the autoimmune disease. So how does it develop? It is an allergen. It is the allergen antibody reaction, and that only forms in response to proteins. And then we understand further that the gluten is the type of protein. It is the type of lectins, and there's a whole broad spectrum of lectins that exist in different various products, particularly in grains and legumes, some vegetables, and many just wide range of products that contain lectins. Gluten, one of the worst type of lectin, and our um, our digestive tract is not specifically designed to break down complex proteins fully and digest them thoroughly, considering that the gluten is very tight polypeptide chain that does not really respond to digestion well. I mean, it's not very digestible. And in the process of being digested in the stomach with hydrochloric acid and the enzyme peptine that is produced in order to break down the proteins, it retains some complex molecular structure. Having done so, it then moves into the intestinal tract, and there it is worked on further with the enzyme trypsin, and that enzyme is not strong enough, again, to further work on proteins, because within the small intestine, the digestion is primarily focused on fats and complex carbohydrates, with the enzymes of pancreatic juices that are activated by bile. And what happens is that the molecular structure of gluten is retained, and this is how it then overflows from digestive tract into the bloodstream. And within the bloodstream, uh, and as we know, our body requires not proteins, particular how we understand them, but amino acids, the building blocks of for proteins, out of which our body will make the necessary proteins on its own through the organelles in each cell, as the brain gives the command to each cell, and there's some mechanisms that are involved that we don't really fully know how the body builds proteins and which proteins it requires at a certain particular time, but our brain does. and the brain gives the command for ribosomes, those organelles within the cell, to begin building the protein using the amino acids that we provide to our body. And there are actually only 9 amino acids that are essential that we actually need to get from nutrition with our food. So we don't really need that wide spectrum of amino acids. Talking about complex proteins, that would actually be out of the league for our body to work with. So gluten, it has the complex structure, and once it retains the complex form for some molecules that overflow into the bloodstream, right there in the bloodstream, it would pose the threat to the body as being antigen. And this is how our body will look at it and begin developing the antibodies in order to neutralize and eliminate those antigens from the system. The macrophages, the immune cells that are actually made of fat, they are produced, and in order to neutralize and break those proteins down, in order to either remove them or neutralize them. And usually, what happens in this reaction is that once these fragments of gluten are neutralized, then um, the macrophages, the lymphocytes, the leukocytes, they also die out, and after this reaction, the body retains this in a form of pollution, or it gets rid of it as much as it can through the liver pathway, partially through the urine and other elimination channels. But some of it is retained within the body and begins to accumulate within the tissues, the adipose tissue, within the connective tissue, and then uh, builds up for a significant amount of time and begin to produce the ongoing inflammation with the reaction antigen antibody also standing for a significant amount of time. That brings the person to the autoimmune disease.
So basically, even if you do not have a diagnosed or a clearly manifested celiac disease, still gluten is causing harmful effects in the
Right.
body.
Yes. In
Always.
fact, yes, it is to a certain degree. There is gluten intolerance that most people have, and little by little they develop this condition, autoimmune, from um, like not being allergic to it in the beginning, and then later, little by little, accumulating this pollution that will begin causing the error or the glitch in the immune system, where it will be viewed as a threat and will be not uh, just go unnoticed. The body will continue forming the antibodies for gluten, and that will be ongoing because people usually have gluten not just once a week, but they eat it almost every day. Sometimes less, of course, but we don't really see people who, uh, exclude the wheat products, the glutinous grains, and uh, out of their regimen on a regular basis. It's the other way around. People are very um, addicted to glutinous flours, glutinous products.
Okay, so let's recap. So gluten is a protein that's very harmful for a human body. It causes allergic reactions. It causes autoimmune disorders. It ends up as internal pollution in the body. It's basically glue-like substance that just
Yes.
glues everything together, um, starting from the organs in the abdomen all the way to the respiratory system.
Yes,
So
and even works
plus
on
it's
more subtle.
addictive. Yes, plus it's
Hmm.
addictive, and there are so many manifestations of this, from celiac disease that we mentioned to headaches and
Inflammations.
inflammations and
Hmm.
redness on of the face and a lot of other conditions.
Right, because this reaction is
Brain
systemic,
fog.
and
Hmm.
antigen antibody reaction is systemic because it's
Hmm.
happening within the bloodstream, or it overflows into the bloodstream. It of course starts within digestive tract, even at the time that,
Lack of energy too.
of course,
Hmm.
yes, it all comes down to the body is trying to fight this antigen, somehow remove it,
Hmm.
and it pulls all the reserves uh, towards that process, and we lack energy, you know, that we
Hmm.
can
Hmm.
use outward, but it's all focused internally in this
Hmm.
process.
So
So
to
yeah.
answer this
Hmm.
question, yes, by ditching gluten, basically by excluding gluten from your everyday regimen, or from refraining from eating gluten at all, has tremendous health benefits.
And as long as we're talking about gluten, and like we mentioned in the beginning, the lectins is pretty much the same story. Um, Little by little, the lectins begin producing the inflammatory response,
Hmm.
and uh, trying to avoid products and foods that have high amount of lectins uh, is also good for the health. Trying to avoid these inflammatory reaction. One more thing is that the pollution now, because prior to some time ago, we did not really see that much of manifestation of gluten allergies,
Hmm.
but now we do more and more, and that is not due only to gluten, but to substances that are being,
Chemicals, pesticides,
yes,
glyphosate, that's used
glyphosate, that's
extensively on the
on
wheat
wheat crop,
crops.
yes,
Hmm.
and that is another catalyzer of this allergy reaction
Hmm.
that we have.
Hmm.
Yes.
Oh, obesity is another manifestation, or excess weight that we didn't mention. Okay,
Yeah.
so can we move on to the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
question?
Please, let's do that.
Okay, is coffee healthy? Because I'm hearing uh, various opinions.
All right.
Good
Well,
question.
to understand this, prior answering this question, we need to understand the constitution of the person. I mean, we're all different states. We're all different constitutions. We are under different influence of different factors. For some people, it can be healthy, but generally,
As a
and then we'll talk
temporary
about generally as a temporary
solution, yes.
solution for
Hmm.
certain specific conditions, it could be healthy. The bitterness of the coffee sometimes may be healthy to stimulate the liver and the gallbladder to
Hmm. To
get rid of
stimulate the
some of
bowel
the,
movement as well.
yes,
Hmm.
to some degree, to push some of the bile. That is uh, time to time it may be used, but generally when we talk about coffee, number one, we need to remember that once the coffee bean is roasted, it produces very bad carcinogen, which is called acrylamide, and that is very high a high level in coffee, roasted coffee beans. So drinking coffee, roasted coffee, even though maybe tasty, but we'll talk about taste too. It's very unhealthy in terms of that we're consuming acrylamide, which is uh, well-known carcinogen. So that's the danger of it. Now, the first time anybody who tries coffee would not like it because the taste of it, if you don't put sugar in it, if you don't put the cream in it, then the taste of it is bitter, and there's less people who like bitter taste. Now, the stimulation is another thing that people like of it. How this stimulation happen? There are two main alkaloids within coffee. One of them is caffeine, the other is tabramine. The stimulation that we get from caffeine is quick and uh, initial and quick, so
It's
it
like
comes
a
first.
jolt of
Yes,
energy.
very sudden, but it lasts only for about 30 minutes. During this time, what happens is that all the blood vessels constrict, but the urinary channels open up, and we are losing water from the
Liquid.
system, basically, while having our blood pressure high, very
So
high.
dehydration takes
And
place.
yes, dehydration happens like very quickly, and the blood pressure goes up. So this is very imbalanced state. It's in some condition it can be used, right? To but most for the most people who are active, who consider themselves healthy, who don't have any problem, this is not a good process mechanism to use every day daily. But the stimulation also acts on nerve receptors and causes the addiction. So then after the response of the action of caffeine is gone, tabramine acts the other way around. It brings the uh, blood pressure down, relaxes the blood vessels, but it constricts the urinary output.
So the complete opposite effect.
Yes, the blood vessels within the urinary tract, I mean, within the kidney. It is completely different effect again, and this is the time when people feel the crash. They crash of energy. First, they have rush, and then they have crash. And this is the time that they um, feel like they want to sleep, and some of them say, this is how coffee acts. In fact, caffeine within the caffeinated coffee acts this way, and we see the picture that we've described. But in decaf coffee, we only have the alkaloid tabramine, which acts the other way around, and that it doesn't have the stimulating effect. And people feel relaxed and actually even sleepy when they drink either um, um, dilutable coffee, the fragrant coffee that
The
has no
instant
caffeine, the instant coffee, yes,
Yeah.
that doesn't have caffeine. So this what happens, and we should understand whether it's right for us and how often should we go with it, because otherwise we are at risk, number one, accumulating that very bad carcinogen, and some because it's burnt, and like roasting is burning, and once things are burnt, and there's some burnt areas of food is present, people chew that, especially that happens during deep frying. This acrylamide is uh, develops, and people who eat food that has it, they are at risk to accumulate that will slowly turn into, may cause the oncological condition. And yes, that's the effect.
So, and then besides being very addictive and super stimulating, and besides, having the carcinogen, coffee also causes a huge wear and tear on the body because of the ups and downs.
Oh yes,
Blood pressure high, blood pressure low,
and
blood
within the
vessels
kidney,
constrict, they expand, so a
within the
lot of wear and
kidneys,
tear.
of course,
And coffee causes also very quick aging, and it's
yeah,
very acidic as well. So it creates a
very
very
acidic.
acidic environment in the body that's prone to developing many different diseases, including oncological conditions.
And it wastes some fat tissue too. It wastes myelin. It wastes a lot of collagen, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
bad thing about
Mm-hmm.
it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So basically, as Dr. Nature here, as he mentioned in the very beginning, coffee may be useful for some people, but it should be used as a prescription
Yeah, that
by
would be the
trained
right way to
by
use
trained
coffee.
natural healing experts, basically.
Right.
Only in that case
Only in
it
that
can
case.
it can
Another
benefit.
another thing is that there's very popular lately have become in the enemas with coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So the effect in this case is more damaging than helpful. If we want to stimulate the bowel movements, you know, there are a lot of other ways to do that. A lot of ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we're using some regular enemas, not specifically with coffee. So what coffee does again, it will go into the bloodstream and give the stimulating effect, which people like, and this is why they think that the enemas with coffee are so good. And another thing is that it will constrict the vessel, whichever it goes to. The constricting effect is there because it's bitter, and
Bitter,
bitter is the type of
astringent.
energy
Mm-hmm.
astringent that does the produces the constricting effect. And due to this effect, the large bowel constricts and the bowel movement happens. But as far as reaching to the small intestine through enema, the coffee would not do that. It would not get into the small intestine. There's no way to release some bile, and this is not the desired effect because one thing is doing relaxation, but more importantly, when we're cleansing, for example, we need to also be able to purge from small intestine and do purgation. Purgation is very essential while doing the cleanse. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then damaging the large bowel wall with coffee because it's very rough because of these alkaloids they're
Mm-hmm.
producing and then tannins they're producing really bad effect on the mucous membrane of the large intestine. So please consider before you do coffee enemas. Consider other ways to do the
Mm-hmm.
relaxation and
Mm-hmm.
uh, have your bowel
Mm-hmm.
movement
So I
successfully.
want to stress again, coffee either, taken internally either through the mouth or as an in the form of an enema. It destroys myelin and collagen, right?
Yeah.
Among many
Hmm.
other different things.
Yep.
Okay.
And those are pretty hard to then to build
Mm-hmm.
because it has to be like a lot of conditions around for us to be successfully building our collagen because collagen is it's basically the matrix of the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's the connective tissue, and connective tissue is hard to restore.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Practically
Mm-hmm.
impossible. So yeah.
So I remember what drinking coffee is like. I never was a big coffee drinker, and it's been probably at least 7, 8 years for us since we stopped drinking coffee at all. And my body still remembers this bitterness and this um, very acidic taste and this very bad aftermath. Now that my body is so much cleaner, um, I I can understand what havoc it wreaks on the body. So.
This probably comes down to the point where we need to understand the difference between stimulation and energy. Stimulation, this is what coffee brings. It's like
Mhm.
empty constriction of the energy channels, either blood vessels or uh, nerve fibers. It only constricts and stimulates them, but there is no true energy rushing through these channels. And this is,
Mhm.
this is the difference between energy drinks that have high amount of sugar, for example, and they think that this energy, but it's not energy; it's stimulation. It's like
Mhm.
imagine a
Harmful
hose.
stimulation.
Yes, the hose that is either empty with water and the water, the water rush is full and strong, or whereas there's like no water, but we're trying to stimulate the hose itself in order to pulsate
Mhm.
and just be
Mhm.
stimulated by it, and that's what is comparable
Mhm.
with.
It's a waste of
It's
body's energy,
yes, it
basically.
is. It is, and this is the way
Hmm.
that we get to age quicker
Hmm.
due
By
to
the
it.
way, we are often asked about coffee, healthy coffee alternatives, and there is Maya nut coffee. There is
Mm-hmm.
chicory coffee substitute. So there are a number of pretty good substitutes.
Dainty
We
blend,
have,
dandelion
yes,
root.
we
Hmm.
actually have a blog on our website, purplesprout.com, where we have written an article about coffee. So you're welcome to read it. Okay, next question.
Yes, let's go
Okay,
on.
we have questions from all over different fields. So, do calories count? Actually, another very good controversial topic.
Calories, they do count if they exist. I would say the thing about calories is that it is the count of the amount of warmth that is produced out of this meal, or a number of nutrients that you consume. However, um, we do not count when we talk about calories how much of energy your body has to put towards in order to process this meal. All right. Another thing is that when we talk about energy in food, and this is what we really need to extract from food, because ultimately we eat for energy. Some people, of course, eat for satisfaction or for
Pleasure, entertainment.
pleasure and entertainment, which is not appropriate, and overload with calories in this case is harmful. So uh, much of which would not even be digested, but just simply flushed out of the system,
Or will stay as
or will
internal
stay and
pollution.
yes, and stagnate and create this pollution, which will overflow again into the bloodstream, and then the body will have to deal with it within the bloodstream. So what matters most as far as the energy goes um, is the purity of energetic content of the food, which is measured beyond calories. That is measured with a different type of um, quality, and that quality is living energy, or energy of life. And this is what many naturopaths now are talking about. They know that there is something beyond these calories, and that pure energy is called prana. This is what it's called in Ayurveda. So we want to have this the content of prana to be strong and pure and rich within the food, in order to have that transform from, because it's easy to transform energy into energy, and it's hard to transform matter into energy. So
Mhm.
whenever we cook food, for example, then we deprive the food from this quality, which is called prana, or the vital
Life
energy,
force.
life force,
Mhm.
which then which loses a lot of enzymes, which loses a lot of good content. It makes the food unviable, uh, and due to that, the body first needs to understand what type of substance it's getting, in order to then to recode it, and find the key to how to digest it. And that is a very significant energy wasting process in itself too. So uh,
Yes, the body is actually, it's not a compost bucket. It's a
because
very
yes,
complicated, very intricate biochemical machine.
exactly, because then there has to be the binding process between the food that is enzyme based, and enzymes, they usually come first before even the microflora works on them, and the enzymic content is very important. And if the food matter does not contain certain enzymes, or those enzymes are neutralized or just died out, killed, then the body will not be able to connect with it because it's producing its own enzymes in order to connect with the enzymes from food. And if it doesn't find those enzymes, then it will be like a alien substance that the body will have to work on to reconfigure and understand what it is that it needs to do with this food in order to begin digesting it. And like I said, this is a very um, energetically, so large capacity for this
Mm-hmm.
process of energy that needs to be dedicated to.
Takes a lot
So
of body reserves.
right. So in this case, calories, they come handy in terms of understanding how much of warming energy that we're getting from food, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But within this, we also have to understand that there will be some amount of energy that will be dedicated to digesting this food, and that will already create the um, miscalculation within the
Mm-hmm.
caloric count. And some of the foods that are hard to digest, which when they are very complex, which when the food is dead, it is preserved. It is mixed with some like with different other ingredients, then it makes our body work harder
Harder. Mm-hmm.
on decoding that and then finally digesting and
Mm-hmm.
absorbing it.
Mm-hmm.
And within that process, a lot of toxins form too, which
Mm-hmm.
then retained by the body and put an extra burden on the system.
Mm-hmm. So
So,
shortened life cycle as a result,
right, and
quicker aging
mhm,
again. Mm-hmm.
and
We
various
will,
diseases,
mhm,
various symptoms
yes, we'll come
initially.
into this world with a certain reserve of energy, and the more the unhealthier our way of eating, the faster this reserve of energy is wasted. So the shorter the life
Yes,
span.
correct. So when we talk about fresh, uh, raw, or just if we talk about cooked food, even that needs to be cooked by yourself in pure form without mixing too many ingredients and consumed very quickly after having prepared that, because in preparation this prana, this life energy, is being released and it's leaving in the form of aromas. This is
So if your food smells good when you cook it, it means all of the prana, all of the good
yeah,
things are leaving the food.
all the spirit of the
so
food. We're
so
talking
so
about
the
spirit
spirit
of the
of the
food.
food fills
Yes.
the air, not your food that you're
Right,
eating.
but you are catching it by,
Yeah.
sniffing it,
Mm-hmm.
by smelling it, and then the best way to consume it is once it's cooked, just eat it right away and do not store the
Mm-hmm.
leftovers. Try not to prepare food so that it has leftovers. Freshly cook it, and this is the way to eat it cooked, in order to still catch some prana and digest it more or less better. However, cooked food would weaken digestion, but the raw food, in many people, our digestive tract is not prepared to function on raw food because it's completely different metabolic mode
Mm-hmm.
that requires a lot of tweaking and alteration and restoration, actually, to be done prior being able to digest it. And if we were to even talk about certain physical substances like vitamin B12 and proteins and amino acids that we need to extract from raw food, then people who do not have appropriate enzymic content in their digestive juices or the appropriate microflora within their intestinal tract would still not be able to process the raw food uh, with the good quality results. And of course, here's another factor that gets in the way is that the modern time products and foods, they are not as good quality as we wish they could be because the soils are depleted because of uh, bad use of the soils, aggressive use.
It's aggressive agricultural
Yes,
methods,
right. And a
pesticides.
lot of
Mm-hmm.
soils are depleted because these things, they come from soil. Our food comes from soil. So as good as the soil, that good is the that the food that we eat. And this is why we need to supplement, for the time being, until we really find a good way of sourcing our food, where we know that it's rich with all the minerals and uh, supplements. In this day and age, they come handy, because we, especially in this transformational period, where people have to be functioning in one metabolic mode for the most of their life, and then maybe in late 30s or 40s or even 50s, when they start considering better and healthier nutrition, they need to begin switching. They want to switch, they don't know how to. And then, of course, the food, even though it may have good content of the vitamins and nutrients that we need, would still be depleting for them, or not filling for them, because they cannot digest this food, because it's a different type of food, and their digestive tract is not attuned to that type of nutrition. And this is a big challenge. So there's a lot of
So a cleanse would be helpful to
cleanse is one
clean
thing,
out
but
some of the
it's
pollution
it's
and
more
then.
than just cleanse. It's more than just a cleanse, because after cleanse, if the intestinal tract, for example, is leaky, like leaky gut, that requires further consideration.
Sure.
Yeah, and
Repairing. Yes.
further routines and further healing plan
Of
to
course.
to
Of course.
restore this those type problems too.
We
Yeah.
are often asked, not very often, but there are sometimes questions about, do we do we actually count calories in the meals that we make? And we don't only make raw meals, we also make vegan keto meals, and of course cooked meals, because majority of the population is of course eating cooked food. So, and we always explain to people that we focus more on the qualities of the food and the energetic properties, as opposed to empty calories.
Yeah, but like I mentioned before, if it's there, then it can be counted too. Why not? It's just one dimension of the nutrition to count calories, and this is very basic, more physical than energetic, um, very square, so to say. Uh, that does not really reflect the whole picture of what nutrition is and how it works within the body. But the way that you can count is understanding that carbohydrates, 1 gram of carbohydrates have 4 calories. 1 gram of protein has about 4 calories, the same amount of calories, and 1 gram of fats has about 9 calories. So now let's think, if proteins and carbohydrates have the same amount of calories, so what does this matter what you're eating, protein or carbohydrate?
So
It's like I said, it's very basic and one dimensional. It doesn't reflect
most of the time
the
rather
entire picture.
unnecessary.
Yes.
So in our entire uh, years and years of healing practice and helping people heal through individual consultations and through other means as well, doing webinars and retreats and all kinds of things, we've never found this system of counting calories helpful.
Right.
Ever.
Yes.
We've never used it.
It is easy on the other hand, but like I said, it does not really give you the picture of what you need to eat and when you need to eat and what results you would expect from eating this or that and in the certain amounts. So, and then again, nutrients, it does not count nutrients. Nutrients is something else beyond calories, and nutrients in specific products that are wrapped and packaged, that are preserved. Nutrients, primarily, they're in very inactive form. Again, they're not vibrant. They're just skeletons of those nutrients that were there before. Especially, it is bad if they're synthetic nutrients, like some vitamins, yeah, which would not convert into the active form within the body and would have to be considered as pollutant, and then the body will have to dedicates certain amount of energy in order to eliminate it, which is then depleting and uh, you know would cause quicker aging. So because there's reserves of the energy that we are provided in life within each of and every our cell, and if that cell works harder, works more frequently and at a
Higher
harder rate,
rate.
higher rate, then of course it will get older than versus when it is provided with pure energy and would not have to work much and hard in order to purify itself, recuperate, and restore itself. But being focused on its particular function within that organ, that would actually make it more uh, like viable and yeah, and living longer.
We are broadcasting to numerous channels today, so we have a lot of questions. We do apologize if we don't get to answer your question, but we will certainly do it next time we have a podcast. So moving on to the next question. Is microwave food safe? So talking about warmth when it comes to calories and talking about warmth when it comes to microwaves.
Well, microwave is inducing some radiation on the food.
Electromagnetic
It creates this
radiation.
electromagnetic field that makes that pulls the ions away, making the most molecules of the food free radicals. Basically, it's like consuming pure free radicals, and those free radicals, they have very bad effect in the body because then they will start damaging by imbalancing our tissue. In terms, it will start ripping the free ions of the tissue because there's nowhere else that it can get it from. And that way, some inflammation, some scarring on the tissue will occur and it will be damaged. So, this is the way that microwave works on the food. And the answer is it's a just one way answer to say no, it is not safe. It is not safe. Even when we consider that the cooked food is not that healthy in the ultimate nutrition, when we talk about ultimate health nutrition, we need to talk about fruitarianism, with some seasonal vegetable consumption, but all raw, being able to chew for a long time to break the to break the components of the food down to liquid consistency, to salivate it really well, to chew and to eat in a very peaceful, calming environment, without interference, without verbal interactions with other people, but just be there alone. And or there could be some family, of course, in a pleasant conversation, but with a greater focus on food that you're eating, on tastes that you're experiencing, on smells that you have. You need to have the good foreplay with your food. All this mindfulness comes first, and then less mindful it is when you start processing the food, even cooking it. Well, when you cook it and consuming it right away, it's acceptable, of course. That's good, no. But again, cooked food would have uh, worse effect on the body. But when we talk about further processing it, and in which case do you work with a microwave? And it's probably when you have leftovers or you've prepared something and you cooled it down and then you need
Well,
to warm it up.
people thaw out and warm up frozen foods as well.
Right.
So
Yes. But then again, when we talk about putting the food into the uh, imbalanced electromagnetic field, which is not grounded, which is distorted, and that distortion, actually, due to that distortion, it's warming it up. Then
microwave does distort the molecular structure of the food. It just makes the
yeah,
molecules collide and crash and distort. And we
how
basically when you pull your plate out of the microwave, it's mutagenic food. It has been mutated.
yeah,
So
yes.
yeah.
So there's
and
no there's no
warming
consideration
food up
of.
on the fire, actual fire, does not produce the same effect because at least fire is natural. Microwave is not natural energy.
Yes, that's
So
right.
it's
That's
like
correct.
nuclear war going on the plate that's sitting in the microwave.
Yeah, you're right. So I hope that fully answers the question. And
Mm-hmm.
all right.
Okay, moving on to the next question. How do I stop eating late at night? Oh, we we are doing a detox program now, so guided detox program, and we just had a question like that.
Um, the appetite at night is due to the microflora, the conditionally pathogenic microflora in our gut that is leading the nighttime activity. There is such bacteria because this is the parasitic bacteria is usually lives at night, just like a lot of other parasites, they get activated
Mhm.
during the night.
Nocturnal
And
creatures.
right, there we go. And they are hungry, and then they produce this effect because they're secreting certain biomediators that are activating your intestinal um, uh, neurons
Mhm.
that then go into your brain and tell you that I'm hungry, I want to eat. And actually, it is not you, but it is your microflora
And
that
by
wants
the
to
way,
eat.
our intestines are considered to be the second brain.
Yes, right. There's a lot of neurotransmitters being
Mm-hmm.
secreted there. And this is the effect of it. So overcoming it is not easy because if you are used to doing that, you've accumulated a lot of that pathogenic bacteria, which doesn't really produce you vitamins, doesn't give you amino acids, no enzymes. It only works on something that otherwise would kill you. But that is their effect, is that they're eating that and removing it, eliminating it without the harmful effect to you. So this is how this pathogenic bacteria is working, and this is how it helps us to stay in a more or less healthy condition.
But they're harmful in
By
the way that, they keep demanding the kind of
yes,
harmful food.
right, and then they would still produce some type of toxins, some type of waste material that will accumulate within the system
If they're
and then
eating,
produce the
they do
toxic
produce
effect
waste, yes.
in general. Yes. So they are called cleaners. If we were to divide this whole microbiome into two major departments, one of them would be builders, and that is the good, positive microflora that helps us build the body. It produces good nutrients for us, very usable, that we can build tissue on. But then once that part is reduced, and in many people it is reduced because of the bad effect of the food and type of the foods that we eat that is nutritionally deprived, and we need just to clean it out of the system. Then the other part of microbiome prevails and takes over and dominates, and that is the cleaners. So we are multiplying cleaners, and cleaners are demanding us to eat late at night because this is their nature. um, so within this whole picture, what do we need to do in order to stop craving these foods is to release this microflora. This is the major approach, to release this microflora. Just let it go by doing laxation and purgation, and that is the beginning of detox. So this is what we do in our program. We release the microflora from small intestine and large intestine, and of course, some microflora still is retained even after purgation, especially
Pathogenic microflora.
both.
Both.
Both is retained,
Mhm.
um, maybe in proportionate amount is retained, and then once, but it's released measurably, and we stop experiencing this need of eating.
Mhm.
Then late at night or any other time, we are just fine with not eating at all, and this is the way we drift into the fasting mode. by releasing this microflora first.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if we don't do it, the first initial days are very hard to go through because that
Mm-hmm.
microflora would still be dying out, and and then again it would be building as itself will be the toxic matter because they're proteins. Microflora is made of proteins primarily, of course, and that needs to also be somehow eliminated through the system. So this is number one. Number two is when we get to being hungry in the evening, uh, we need to let it go mentally because it's all the mental game. It's not particularly that our body is deprived of
Starving.
nutrients and starving, and it really cannot go on because then it is the liver, and the liver has the ability of sustaining the body for over 30 days easily with all the
Mm-hmm.
nutrients that we need, and not just in the liver. There's a lot of nutrients within other organs,
Mm-hmm.
vital organs, and within the tissues too. Muscle tissue has enough of glycogen and some enzymes to in order to for us to go on and the body being supported. Of course, at this time we're changing the mode, the metabolic mode, but and that may come uh, somewhat challenging, but the main challenge would probably be is the hunger. But the hunger is not produced by the body. The hunger is produced by that microflora. Initially, though, what we need to do is let it go mentally and engage into some other activities. Let's do some stretching, some exercises, go
Go
for
for
a
a
walk.
walk. Go
Yes,
for a run,
yes. Take a warm shower or go into
or
the
even a warm bath
or
would
even a
be
warm
better.
bath. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Do
so
intestinal exercises. By the way, we posted
Mm-hmm.
them on our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Drink water. Drink some herbal teas that will satisfy
Mm-hmm.
or at least cut out the feeling of emptiness and
do
craving.
do
So
some breathing, but
mm-hmm.
usually when people are first getting into, cleansing or trying to train themselves not to eat late, it will be very difficult for them to take their mind off of this,
Craving.
craving. Yeah, so it's always better, almost always works, is to do some type of physical activity. That's what helps the best.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Just the same way as before you're doing your physical activity, you would not eat anything, of course. And while you're doing the physical activity, the body is releasing glycogen that is
Hmm.
nourishing the body, and then you feel less stressed and you will feel less hungry, and the craving is cut off that way
Hmm.
partially. So dilute the flora with water. Drink significant amount
Hmm.
of water that will help you cope through this craving.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. Here's a good one. Why do my kids have a lot of colds in the spring?
um, yes, it's a wonderful question.
And
Um,
a great observation, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are natural cycles during the year. The year starts, let's say, with spring, and then goes into summer, into fall, into winter, and they're considered to be different energetically too. How different are they? They are ordered um, by the way that they influence our internal fluids within our body. So during spring, the liquids, the fluids, the plasma, and the lymph, they prevail, they rise. During summer, it is the bile that rises. Um, Probably it'd be easier to explain it in a little different terms. So let's start with winter because then after winter we go into spring. Through winter we accumulate a lot of we eat a lot because this is a time of deprivation. We feel strong appetite and we
Hmm.
eat a lot during winter in order to cope through
Heavier foods.
Yes, heavier food in
Hmm.
order to cope through stress of winter, through coldness, in order to keep our internal fire going. And during this time, as the metabolism is heightened up and boosted due to these heavy foods, we accumulate lots of metabolic wastes within our cells, within our tissues, because toxins are usually accumulate within the tissues, the toxins of the cellular metabolism. Um, and then during winter, our tissues are under the influence of the cold weather. They're constricted, the vessels are constricted, and things are retained within the tissue. This is how the natural cycle works on our physiology. Once we get into the warm time of uh, season,
Hmm.
that is spring, things become to relax and melt down.
Just like snow melts when spring comes,
Yes,
so do
right.
the toxins and the mucus and.
And so does the toxins, mucus, and lymph, and
Hmm.
the interstitial fluid, uh, which is saturated with intracellular metabolites, would actually start melting down and move from the tissues into the
Pathways.
pathways, into the bloodstream. And the same would happen within the more general elimination channels like respiratory system. Uh, the mucus would start being a little softer and more liquidy and begin to flow into the channel and rise up. And at this time, if we don't take any measures or any steps to clear these accumulations out after winter season, then the nature will do it for us. It will create the conditions where pathogens will get into this overflowing mucus and begin developing there, causing some type of flu, cold, making you expectorated or somehow eliminated through
Hmm.
different other channels.
And then the body turns on the
Mm-hmm.
self cleansing, self detoxifying mechanism and starts expelling mucus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when this is when you get runny nose, this is when you start coughing, this is when you have a fever. So these are all signs of a body trying to cleanse itself. So that's
Right.
why kids, especially when, well, adults as well, this is when people start having a lot of colds in the springtime because this is the best time for the body to cleanse itself, and the body being a biological machine, it knows that. So it tries to live in sync with nature, so it
It
starts
lives by
cleansing
natural
itself.
cycles. Yes. And yet, the worst food for mucus accumulation is, of course, the type of food most people and especially kids eat during winter, which is sugars, which is the flour, white flour, a lot of polymeric carbohydrates that have gluten, that have the lectins, that actually then turn into not just those
Fries and
uh,
other things.
inflammations, but in the mucus
Pizza.
substance, which flows within tissues, within digestive tract, that gets into the respiratory tract and accumulates there in the lower lobes, in the sinuses. If you were to ask any dentist when they do the X-rays of the maxilla of the jaw, or like the head X-rays or ultrasounds, you will learn that there is a lot of cysts with pus within our sinuses, within our frontal lobe. And another thing is that within the head, and the head area right here is considered to be of the earth energy. It's the and that accumulates a lot of heavy metabolic waste too. It's prone to accumulate heavy metabolic waste, and this is why then our attention span is so poor, our memory is so poor, because the head tends to accumulate a lot of waste products, a lot of mucus that then is not just you cannot spit it out or expectorate it, but would just be stuck and cling to the mucous membranes of the sinuses that not even the regular wash, nasal wash, can remove it, and that accumulates years after years. And but the brain needs to get rid of it. Brain actually is one of the largest waste producing organ, in fact, because brain, is made of primarily fats, and it can produce a lot of waste products too,
Mm-hmm.
because that needs to regenerate, and there's a lot of lymph that's going through the brain, even though the lymphatic system is very limited within the brain, but uh, and the flow of lymph from the head is very challenged by nature already. So that's another consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And
So have
this
your
what happens
kids, yeah.
in spring,
Mhm. Have your kids eat lighter foods, healthier foods. Do
Mm-hmm.
it as a family, because you can't just force your kids to eat healthy. It needs to come from the parents, of course. And but in the springtime, when it's already the cold and flu season,
Mm-hmm.
just eat as much of fresh greens as possible, raw fruit and vegetables as much as possible. Maybe try to get used to drinking green smoothies. You can make them even with kiwi, and make them sweet and fruity at first, and then
Mm-hmm.
move on to
Also, as a preventative,
vegetable ones. So there are ways to mitigate this process and make it easier for the kids.
another preventative measure during the beginning of season of spring is to do some nasal wash, the wash of nasal passages prophylactically, even without considering there is, any flu or cold actively going on. You can have your kids, uh, teach your kids how to wash the nasal passages with a
Mm-hmm.
neti pot, and then now and then instill some oil drops in order to emulsify that pus and those pusses and pussy deposits within the nasal cavities. Liquefy them, emulsify them, pull them out, break them, and wash them out. And that will be a very good solution, preventative solution, in order not to then gain any microbial infection and
Mm-hmm.
go through the full swing disease, uh, cold or flu.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Also, having your kids drink warm, hot liquids, such as herbal tea, helps a lot instead of icy ones. Um, so
Yeah.
consider doing that as well.
All right. So I
Okay.
think
Yes, we are
I
out
think
of
we
time.
are out of time. Yes,
Yes,
this was our first
we have covered
podcast.
several questions. So thank you very much for submitting them. Keep submitting them. We will be doing more podcasts answering your health questions. Here is Dr. Nacho, Karim Ra, and Irina
Irina
Ra
Ra.
of
Hmm.
Purple Sprout Conscious Organics and Purple Sprout Health Academy. Happy to be with you today.
Thank you.
And please submit your questions through by email,
Hmm.
info@purplesprout.com, or any
Yeah.
of our social media channels.
Let us know what you'd like to hear us talk about. We'll be up to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be healthy.
Bye.